All right, class.
Oh!
What?
Everybody,
Hey!
what?
Have bad news for you.
No!
Yeah!
The Earth is under siege
What?
by aliens.
I don't like that happening. How can we have that not be what's happening? Okay, let me guess. Animals are involved. Turn into them?
Did you read the syllabus ahead of time?
No.
You're just that smart. All right, today we are talking about Animorphs, the 1996 through 2001 children's book series by K.A. Applegate.
It's Scholastic Book Club, baby!
Yo, fuck kids who read books with words.
Demerit. All right, we're starting out strong, apparently. Okay, before we even go anywhere talking about Animorphs, we need to say, I forgive all of you and all of you at home. Because let's be honest, everybody slept on Animorphs, and now they're just a fucking meme because the covers looked retarded.
No, I was so into it.
Except for you, Ben.
I read this shit like all the way through middle school.
Me too.
Yeah.
It was me and you were the only people who ever read these books.
I read them too. I was there.
I forgive
I read
everybody.
more than you. That's true.
I forgive everybody at home.
Fuck kids who rode books with bikes.
Another demerit. I didn't understand that at all.
That's two.
3 and you're out.
You're almost out.
Okay, because let's be honest, it was the mid-90s. Photoshop was not a thing anybody really understood yet. So doing a simple little morph thing back and forth from two photographs apparently might have been impressive to some people. And now the book covers are just memes. But
Dude, that first one that has Jake turning into an iguana with like straight up like Power Rangers movie level CGI.
yes, like
It's the sickest
the
thing I
iguana
ever
has
saw
like
when I was
6
like 9 and a half.
polygons. It was fucking sick. Yeah, but you have to understand that everybody treats Animorphs as a joke. It's real fucking shit, and that is what I'm here to talk about today. So I forgive everybody for not reading them, but now I'm gonna make you feel like a fucking fool for not having done it. Okay, so the general premise of Animorphs. We need to keep in mind, this is a book series for children. This was sold at the Scholastic Book Fair in elementary school. I found it when I was 9 years old at Catholic school. They had no idea what they were selling. Okay? And just like everybody else, I saw the book and I didn't know what I was fucking looking at. I was big into Goosebumps at the time, and so I was like, oh, this must be like a Goosebumps knockoff. Because there was a bunch of Goosebumps books where they like turned into creatures or animals and stuff, and it was scary. And so I was like, that must be what this is. And then I opened it up, and like, it was about a kid trying to kill himself. And there was like a bunch of aliens and wars and shit, and that's what this book series is actually about. It's about interstellar conflict, child soldiers, and the horrors of war.
What?
Yes.
Dismemberment.
And lots
of dismemberment.
Lots of dismemberment.
Is what really sticks out in my memory.
Did you?
I remember I did read a few pages of an Animorphs book once, and they mentioned Blockbuster, and I was like, how do they get away with it?
Yeah. It's pretty.
And Quaker oatmeal.
There's a lot. There is a thing. I don't even mention that here, but there is a thing with oatmeal.
For our younger viewers who are, in the actual age range these books are aimed for, Blockbuster was a video rental store.
Imagine if Netflix was a real place you could walk into. That's what Blockbuster
you got your
is.
movies on these big black blocks that you put in a box.
You mean like VR? Like.
If only it was that. If only it was that.
Add an extra letter.
More like VR.
Oh, VCR.
Yeah.
Never heard of it before.
All right, let's settle down, class. The general premise of Animorphs is as such. There is a war going on that's been going on for about 50 years by the time the series begins between two alien species, the Andalites and the Yeerks. So the Andalites are like, dude, if you're already getting overwhelmed by this, you are fucked. Walk out now.
I'm gonna need you to hold it together. Thin ice.
Okay, so the Andalites are like the protagonist, like good guy species in this conflict. They are like these centaur-esque creatures that are like all blue and purple, and they stand on like 4 hooves like a centaur. They have like a humanoid-esque upper body. They have regular hands with 7 fingers, and they have no mouths because they communicate telepathically. They have like 2 stalks with extra sets of eyes on them because they can see in like any direction, and they have really a long fucking tail with a scythe on the end. They're like really,
Sick.
they're fucking dope. They're hyper intelligent and they're like really good at fighting, and that's kind of like where a lot of the technology that allows all the stuff in Animorphs to happen. The Andalites are the ones that invented it. So they invented like laser weapons that they call shredders. They discovered zero space, which is how you can do faster than light travel.
Yes, you have to have that in your sci-fi.
Yes, you do.
I want to know how it works, Tom. Please tell me.
Basically, the way that they describe zero space is that it's basically like the space version of antimatter. It's like anti-space. When you go into tunnel into zero space, it is just a white void, and you can basically punch through it and roughly go from one location to the other very quickly as a way of traveling essentially faster than light without having to.
It's like the nether in Minecraft that you hop into to get accelerated speed in the real world that you hop back out,
I'm
right?
too
Hey,
much
blocks
of,
in overworld,
I'm too
man.
much of a
Blocks.
boomer to understand Minecraft.
Okay, I get it, I got it.
I just have to say, by the way, as a Zoomer,
Yeah.
I thought of Animorphs. Here's my conception of the plot. Guy can turn into rabbit as like a superpower, and he fights maybe crime. Like there's a plot where maybe
I don't.
like
I forgive you.
Yeah.
okay,
That totally makes
but we need to understand that it does. Like I assumed white suburbia kid with sneakers fights crime or
Okay,
something.
but here's-
it's space now.
Okay.
We immediately jump to
Hold
space.
on, we're gonna have to get through a lot of this.
There's a lot to get
Yeah.
through, okay? So the idea is that you have the Andalites, right? And so they're the good guys. They also invented the morphing technology, which is what the main characters of this series use to fight and continue their guerrilla campaign that goes on for about 5 years throughout the series of books. Okay, so that's the Andalites. They also are all telepathic, and so they communicate through what's called thought speak, which is something you can also
That's
do.
what hoes
in
do
more.
on Instagram, as I understand.
Demerit. So those are the good guys, as it would be. The Yeerks are completely different. The Yeerks are tiny little slugs that are about this big. Naturally, on their home planet, they live in these big pools called Kandrona pools, and they get their sustenance from Kandrona pools and stuff. And they have like no vision, they have no sight. They're just like dumb little slugs. They're intelligent, but they really have no way of like capitalizing on their intelligence, and they don't have much in terms of a society. But their one thing that they can do is that they can go into your ear canal, wrap around your brain, and control you. So they're a parasitic species. And so by the time the book series begins, the Yeerks have basically stolen all of the Andalites' technology and are launching an invasion campaign across all of space to capture races, enslave them, and use them as host bodies. Nate.
So I assume that this war is just a defensive war by the Andalites saying, no, stop taking us over, because they're the good guys. Like, is there any further, like territorial dispute, like a Star Trek-esque?
Well, the Yeerks are just a generally invasive species. Their whole MO is to enslave
So
other
they're like the
races.
Borg, kind of. They just want to take
Sure.
over. And, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
they were very limited in the beginning to their home planet, and for reasons we will get to in the plot later, they eventually gained space travel and just launch a campaign throughout the known galaxy to enslave as many races as they can.
Basically, these manlets got too big for their britches, and we need to stomp them down like we did back in
Pretty much.
Napoleon.
1812.
That's what I'm
The
talking
Chad
about.
Andalite, the Virgin Year.
Pretty much. Okay, so the Yeerks have their own kind of like bastardized versions of Andalite technology. They have zero space. They have their own versions of energy weapons called Draken beams. And the thing you have to know about Yeerks is that when they go off planet, they no longer have access to Kandrona, which is like the life sustenance that they need. So every 3 days, they have to go what's called to a Yeerk pool. And so it's basically an artificial recreation of the pools they naturally live in. They go in there, they absorb Kandrona rays, and then they go back into the host and continue doing whatever the fuck they want to do. So throughout the history of the series, there are like 3 main host bodies that the Yeerks have. And if you are a host to a Yeerk, you're called a controller. So there are 3 controllers that you're mostly going to see throughout the series in addition to humans, because we're going to get to humans. There are the Ged, which are basically like another species that's native to the Yeerk's home planet, and they're like the shittiest, worst, like bronze class, 1-star garbage host. If you have a Ged, your life sucks. Because they have like an asymmetrical body, they can barely walk, they're almost completely blind, but it's way better than just being in a Yeerk pool. So if you're like a fucking basic bitch in the Yeerk army, you have a Ged body. The second race is called the Taxons. Taxons are like giant 7-foot tall fucking like centipedes with giant razor teeth mouth. And they're intelligent, but they don't really have much of like a society because a Taxon's like biggest weakness is that they are eternally hungry. It's like an uncontrollable, insatiable, never-ending, eternal hunger. And even a Yeerk overtaking a Taxon body, they cannot control the hunger. They are cannibalistic. They eat anything. Like if a Taxon gets wounded, it'll start eating itself. It's so fucking hungry. It's uncontrollable. So they have, not only are they using Taxons as controllers, but like the vast majority of Taxons throughout the story aren't even controllers. They're just working with the Yeerks just because the Yeerks give them meat, and they just thought that was a good fucking deal because they're always hungry. So a ton of the Taxons are just like, you're giving us food, we'll fight for you, and that's the Taxons. The third species that's in this, the Yeerks have are the Hork-Bajir. Hork-Bajir are like their main shock troopers. They're like the ones that'll really fuck you up. They're these giant, like 8 to 9 foot tall, like lizard people that have blades all over their arms and tails and then legs and shit, and they'll just fucking kill you. If you're like a badass, if you're like a general in your army, you get a Hork-Bajir body. There's not a lot of them because the species can't really reproduce very quickly, and they already, before the series begins, they overtook the Hork-Bajir homeworld and enslaved all of them, and there's not a lot left for plot reasons that we'll get to at this point. So those are the two main factions at war at the start of the series. And the start of the series is that the Yeerks have arrived on Earth, and that's where the story begins. Yes.
Just about the reproduction. Like, do the Yeerks in the bodies of the hosts that they control, if they need them for their army, will they mate with each other in the bodies? How do they create their armies?
It's a great question.
Well, they
In the bodies of about the reproduction.
and that's where the story begins. Yes.
Just about the reproduction. Like, do the Yeerks in the bodies of the hosts that they control, if they need them for their army, will they mate with each other in the bodies? How do they create their armies?
It's a great question.
Well, they basically, the reason they're going all over the galaxy is to get more hosts and stuff. I can talk about this now, even though we'll get into it later, is that the Yeerks have classified all species into 5 classifications. There's a class 1 species, which is unfit for infestation. This means their biology is simply incapable of housing them in their brains. And so they have no interest in these. One of the species is the Skritna, which we'll get to later. They're unfit for infestation. Class 2 is able to be infested, but almost useless. Again, would be an example of that. They have no battle capability, their bodies are shit, they're just bad. Like, you can use them, but why would you want to? Class 3 is viable, good, but has severe drawbacks. That would be the Hork-Bajir, because there's really none of them left. There's only a select few, there's a couple 100,000 at this point. They're great hosts, but there's just not a way to get more of them, for reasons we'll get into later. Class 4 is a species that is great, there are a lot available, but they're so advanced, they're very hard to take over, which would be the Andalites. Like, if they could, they would all be in Andalite bodies, but the Andalites would fucking steamroll them, because there's so much more Andalites than there are Yeerks. And then Class 5 is like the golden, perfect species, where there's a ton of them, they're not very strong, and their bodies are pretty good. It's you,
Me.
and you, and you. We're all Class 5, baby!
You're just brainlet enough.
Exactly.
Wait to host a swing.
Yeah, Ben.
I think it's worth pointing out that a controller is not just, they don't just take over the mind. The controller is conscious and knows
Yes.
they are being controlled.
Exactly.
Like, they have to observe themselves.
You are a prisoner in your own mind.
Betraying everyone that they love.
There are-
fucked up.
There are lots of points throughout the entire book. Like, there's some points where you will be in, because all these books are told in first person. So there is a couple books where you have the Yeerk's perspective, and they argue with their hosts all the time because they're still trapped in their brain. They have conscious thoughts. They're aware of everything that's going on, but they're just trapped in their own body.
Like, when the Yeerk goes into the Yeerk pool, they come out of the brain, and the host is just like, ugh, I'm free, but they put me in a fucking cage, and I just have to wait
Right.
for the Yeerk to crawl back in my ear, and then I'm back to being a slave.
tough shit.
It's a shitty fucking time, and we're all on the chopping block. At
Man, I
this point.
fucking hate those goddamn maggots.
Yeah, fuck them,
You know,
right?
I object to that, but I'm already hosting so many
Yeah.
podcasts already. and
What's
it's-
one more, dude?
Yeah.
It's all good. Okay, so that is like the general premise. Let me make sure I'm not skipping over anything before I continue. I'll whip out my notes for the first time. Coronavirus.
Don't even joke about that. And last year, when the coronavirus broke out,
Oh,
the universe, that was a disaster.
Thank
Quarantine
God.
everyone. It'll never.
Thank God the
happen
Andalites came and saved us.
again.
We took care of that. It was great.
Okay.
The PTA. The PTA took care of it for us.
Thanks,
they're,
guys.
They're watching out for us.
Appreciate it. All right. So the story of Animorphs kind of begins, and the series itself. That's all like some backstory. The series itself is 5 13-year-old kids are coming home from the mall, totally normal, totally normal life. This story canonically takes place in 1998, so it is the 90s.
I've got Backstreet Boys playing in my head.
Exactly. So they all cut through an abandoned construction site to get home quicker, and
Never a good idea.
never a good idea.
Some urban youth that just doesn't go well.
No, they are the urban youth.
Oh,
They have nothing to fear.
So they happen upon a crashed fighter that has landed in the middle of this fucking abandoned construction site, and an Andalite comes out of this spaceship, and he's heavily injured. His name is Prince Alfengor, and he is like a fucking badass dude, but he's dying. He's dying. They obviously don't have no idea what the fuck is going on, but Prince Alfengor, for whatever fucking reason, has them come over and tells them about the Yerks. He's like, the Yerks are bad. They take over your brains. They're already here. You cannot trust anyone. Anyone you know could be a controller, and that's bad. Nate.
Why didn't he trust them?
Plot reasons, we will get to them here.
Oh, so
Okay.
so I was just curious. So Andalites can't like sense with their
research
thoughts that someone's possessed by a year.
No,
Correct. They cannot.
They can sense their thoughts, but
Yes.
they can't like.
They only sense.
I
The
thought
only,
that might be how they fight them. Or
they're
something.
not telepaths.
Uh-huh.
They just, because they don't have physical mouths and they eat through their hooves, they're herbivores, and they kind of absorb grass through their hooves. That's how they eat.
Dude, when they step in a fat shit, are they like, oh, hey?
Yeah, hey,
They
what's
love
going
that.
on?
They love that.
Love it.
Okay.
So-
Thank you.
So they run into Elfengor, and he's like dying because he's in like his ship has crashed here, and he's fucked up and he's about to die. And so he's like, the Yerks are here. They're already like invading this planet. You guys are in deep shit, and my buddies are not going to be here for a while. So your planet is fucked unless you do something. These 5 kids are the only thing standing between like the complete destruction of the planet.
Uh-oh.
Why does it have to be them?
Because he's about to die, and they're the only people he can talk to. Like he's like literally about to fucking like bleed out and die. He's in a crash. He's dead. You know, the rest of the ship he was with has been destroyed.
Maybe this is also something you're going to answer later, but like, how come is he so much further ahead of the rest of the army coming to Earth? Like,
It
why-
will be answered.
Okay,
It'll be answered here.
Gotcha.
Okay. So he holds out this cube called the Escafil device, which is casually referred to as the morphing cube throughout the rest of the series. And so if he
More than time, baby.
Recruit a team of teenagers.
Exactly.
Attitude.
Exactly. He's the Zordon of the series. So they all gain.
If Zordon died
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
Zordon had a good
Instead of in the movie.
die at the start.
So he gives them the power to morph. And this is like the Andalites' most advanced technology and the most coveted technology by the Earth. It's obviously really good for reconnaissance, really good for stealth. And so they get the power to morph, and then they all have to hide. There's a bunch of Yerk ships come down, and the main villain of the entire series, Visser 3, confronts Elfengor, and they're all kind of hiding, watching this
It's a
happen.
pretty solid dude.
He's great.
Okay.
By the time we're done, you're all...
I heard he did some pretty fucked up shit though.
That's all propaganda. Andalite propaganda. Don't listen to that shit. All right. So, Visser 3 looks just like Elfengor. Because Visser 3 is known as the Abomination. He is the only Yerk who ever controlled an Andalite body. So he also has the power to morph. And so he stands over Elfengor and he talks to them like they know each other because they're both badasses from their races. They have a big, long history. and he's like taunting him and shit. And then these children watching horror. Remember, this is a book written for 9-year-olds. These children watching horror as Visser 3 transforms into some alien abomination like 13 times his normal size, picks up the bleeding corpse, the dying corpse of Elfangor, and taunts him as he slowly rips him apart and devours him. And the mental screams of Elfangor dying echo through the heads of the children. And it specifically says at the beginning of the book, we never forgot this moment. They are scarred for life immediately.
That's an Attack on Titan moment, right?
This is the beginning of the book series. And so the remaining 62 novels chronicle a 4-year guerrilla campaign of 13-year-old kids fighting back against this like massive tide of invading aliens with highly advanced technology. That is the general premise of Animorphs.
All right.
Y'all should have read it, right? It's fucking dope.
I just want to say, because I have to
needs to be
ask,
about 20% core.
you work as a security guard for an abandoned construction like mall site.
Yeah.
Did you ever hope that you would finally be blessed
It needs to be about 20%
down with crash
core.
alien spaceship
Every
you would be
fucking
protected?
day.
You know, so one of the benefits of morphing is that one may have ailments about your own body.
Oh yeah.
Dude, okay, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I was about to get this. The next point is morphing technology. One of the very helpful things about morphing technology is that when you morph back, all your injuries are healed.
Yes.
So if I had an Escafil device, this shit would be gone!
Oh, that's true.
As a side effect, a beneficial side effect for the author, that means that K.A. Applegate can write graphic descriptions of these kids
Incredibly!
gruesomely disemboweled and dismembered. As long as they can morph before they die, they're fine.
Yeah. And this happens all the time. It's incredible.
Feeling that that the alien ship crash landing and all that doesn't lead to many good things for these kids.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely
No, it's
not.
gonna be a happy-go-lucky adventure.
There's like crime, the local banks
It's a campy 90s romp, everybody.
It's a swashbuckling adventure story.
Funny enough, this was adapted into a cartoon or a live-action show on
I
Nickelodeon.
saw that.
Yeah.
Which was very dumbed down, which was a real shame. I wanted to see disemboweled Elfangor right in the beginning.
So the other thing we're not really is like everyone could be pretending to be themselves and could be. Like, this is one of those things where everyone could be the villain.
Right.
You know, your whole family life is.
Because the whole thing is, okay, so these kids now have to somehow figure out how to fight this advanced alien species, but they can't let on that they're aware of what's going on. Like, their friends could be aliens. I mean, their friends could be Yerks. Their family could be Yerks. Like, anybody could be. So they have to keep it completely on the down low. And so, like, by day, they're just, like, going to school and trying to get homework done. And then by night, they're fighting aliens.
The only way to be sure that someone's not a controller is to monitor them constantly for
Right.
3 days, so you know
Oh, yeah.
that they never go to a.
So if you can monitor somebody for 3 days, they never go somewhere.
Do
To
they just like regularly test new people they meet, just like lock them down?
Throughout the series, they pretty much become loners and keep to themselves and become very paranoid about everyone and everything around them. Their psyches are irreversibly damaged.
Sucks. Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, it seems like morphing into a bear seems like so little to combat this interesting.
Sure, the entire like planetary system is controlled by this invading force, but I can be like a goldfish if I really want to.
Right.
Fascinating.
but you're a bear that, like, when you get bisected, as long as you morph back,
You'll be healed.
you can become another bear and do it again. So, you know, the scales are
You can be
balanced.
like a lumbering
a little
bear,
bit.
and then like a guillotine, like slice your head off, and as your head is like you like morphs into a human, and you just hit the ground running.
This happens multiple times.
You told me about there are even more terrible consequences of transforming, such as like doesn't your mind like slowly become like
yes.
You should explain.
I'm going. Okay.
Tell us all about
So,
morphing.
I just want to say before we move on, the themes of this story include the horrors of war, exploitation, child soldiers, slavery, sanity, freedom, morality, body horror, and the mental scarring veterans of war face during conflict and peacetime.
Yeah.
This is a series for kids. I was 9 when I read this.
Future United States Marines.
Yeah, exactly.
Pipeline.
I recommended this
It
series
needs to
to
be
my
about
cousin
20%
who's a year
core.
younger than me, and his mom said, you know, I think this book was a little witchy. It had a couple swears in it. So I don't know about
If
it.
that's the worst you saw of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of America. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. What is this morphing and how does it work? Because it's not like magic. It's not like some magical biological thing andalites can do. It is a technology developed for the war, and it's a relatively recent invention by the time the war starts. It's only been around for like 10 or 15 years.
It's an iPhone 12.
Yeah, it's like an iPhone, but not
You
at
turn
all.
into a bear.
Yeah, you know,
But a cube.
there's an app for that. Okay, so the way morphing works is that there are lots of like limitations and rules for how it functions, like any good sci-fi technology. You can only morph into an animal you've made physical contact with and focused on. Because what you're doing is you're actually absorbing its DNA and it's permanently becoming a part of you. So it only works with animals you've consciously decided to try and acquire, which is the term for it, after you've gotten the power. It's not like you pet your dog before, like you can just morph to it. It doesn't work like that. You have to consciously acquire these animals. Once you've done it, acquired an animal once, you can turn to it as many times as you want. So that is how that works. Yep. When you morph into something larger or smaller than yourself, the excess mass is either expunged into or acquired from zero space. So if I become a flea, all of my excess matter is jettisoned into zero space and held there temporarily until I revert back.
Held by what?
It's just in the void. There's nothing. It's anti-space.
How easy is it to like track the place? Like, can you ever lose it in the void if you're not careful?
There is a mention where because like ships also travel through zero space. If a ship impacts with your mass in zero space, you die.
What is the likely, like, how
Infinitesimally small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which means it happens at some point in the series.
I imagine zero space is as big as regular space.
Yeah.
Or maybe bigger.
It's not never gone into in depth, but like it is vast. The odds of it happening are so incredibly small, so of course it happens to our main characters at some point. Also, if you become something bigger, it brings mass out of zero space. I'm not sure how that exactly works, but that's what it's called.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in Star Trek, when you reference like the subspace particles that exist all around us at all times are just formed into a thing.
Sure.
Sounds like a similar story.
You know, some mumbo jumbo. It's all
Yeah.
good. It's fine. You can only stay as an animal for up to 2 hours. You have to consciously demorph back to your base form, or you are trapped in that form forever. That is what is called a
It
monopoly.
needs to be about 20% cooler.
You're not let you're trapped in a morph.
It needs to
So
be about
every time
20%
they
cooler.
go on a mission, it has to be done in under 2 hours, so they can demorph and save space, but they're all trapped in that form
That's
forever.
a real short game.
Yes, it is, especially when you fucking have school all day too. So you know, it's a tight fucking, it's a tight fucking schedule, guys. All right. When you morph, you retain your sense of consciousness, so you're still yourself, but the animal's mind and instincts is also there in your brain with you. So the first time you morph, you have to like battle for dominance with the instincts of the animal, because if you don't, and you don't keep concentration while you're in the form, the animal instincts will take over, and you can lose yourself. And if you lose yourself, you can easily go past 2 hour limits and become a noctlet. So there are certain instances where animals they morph into with incredibly strong and rigid instincts basically makes them like temporarily go insane as they desperately try to claw against their own minds to retain their sense of self. Which is pretty cool.
It needs to be about 20% cooler.
Ants and termites are like the worst ones.
Yeah.
There's a fucking, I'm not going to talk about it here, but there's this one book where they all morph termites to sneak into somebody's house. And their minds are just completely taken over by the automatous nature of the termites. And they happen to have morphed into the wrong hive of termites and went into another hive. So they got all their limbs and shit ripped off and are dying and dissected and cut in half. And so they're demorphing quickly, screaming, and they like break through the wall and fall out into the basement of the building. And they all are traumatized forever. And like
are all their clothes held at the zero space as well?
their clothes don't work. So in the beginning, whenever they demorph, they're all naked. They eventually, because andalites don't wear clothes, so that was never taken into consideration with the morphing technology. They eventually find out if you're wearing skin-type things like leotards and whatnot, that can stay on you through the morphing process. And by the end of the series, they find out once you're like really practiced with morphing, you can do things like tight jeans and stuff as well. But for the most part, they're all like wearing leotards.
Imagine some motherfucker demorphing into a skin-tight pizza suit.
Yeah, very fun.
Who would do that?
No one I
You
know.
would work crazy.
Style, you're dedicated.
Yeah.
We had an epic practical joke on Mother's Day, bro. Well, hi, Mom. I'm in an international fucking conflict.
You sure hope I don't get hit by a battleship traveling
She
through
pulled
space.
out her shredder and blasted because she's a controller.
And intergalactic.
You're right. You're absolutely
So we already kind of touched on this a little bit, but the massive benefit to morphing is that when you morph, any wounds that you had in your base form are healed once you revert that aren't genetic. So like if you have downs, you're screwed. But like, you know, if you like broke a leg, you can just morph into something, morph back, and you're fine.
I'm sorry. I was just like, what if you have something from way long when you were a young man, and then you got the technology to morph? Like maybe I literally lost my leg when I was 2 years old, and I have a leg, and then I morph back.
Comes back.
It comes back.
Yep, because it's based on your DNA, not on your physical
I was
body.
gonna say.
Do any of the main characters like have an ailment like that that gets healed right at the start?
No, but there are some secondary characters that do.
Okay.
It also works the other way. Like any injuries you sustain in morph, when you revert, go away, and they don't stay with the animal. This is how they get limbs bisected and cut in half and fucking disemboweled, all sorts of shit. Lots of graphic violence for kids.
Why?
Because war is bad.
It
That's
needs
like
to be
the theme
about
of this whole book, is that
20%
war is like the worst thing ever.
This is like 60 books of like little kids getting fucking PTSD.
Yeah.
From
That is the entire series. And so the last thing
It needs to be about
is
20% gore.
that while you're in morph, you can communicate telepathically like Andalites do. Because obviously Andalites are telepathic, so they develop the technology so they can continue to have that skill when they're in morph. That's why it's great for reconnaissance and spying and things like that.
They built push to talk into the morphing
Yeah.
tube. Yeah.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you? It just seems so convenient. Okay. So that is the general idea of Animorphs. Now we're going to start going through the chronologic storyline and everything that fucking happens and how these kids' lives are fucking ruined. So if anybody thought this was fucking lit and wants to go in, no spoilers, now is your time to ruin my ad revenue and leave. So,
I'll
don't.
see you guys.
No, you're all fucked.
I got some reading.
You have to stay here. I know none of you guys will even fucking read books that aren't on Audible, which funny enough, these are being published on Audible right now.
Yes.
audibletrial.com/Tommy Oliver if you want to get a free book. You get the first one.
Oh, there's a real link. Okay.
Do it. They're also, in October, there's a comic book adaptation coming out of the first book. And the guy's like apparently a huge fan of Animorphs, and if it sells well, I'm assuming that they'll probably do more, which would be pretty cool.
If it's good.
If it's good. I'm assuming it will be. Fingers crossed. He's like an Eisner-nominated comic artist. So.
Okay.
A little bit of credit. A little bit.
Might go.
That's a word I heard one.
Could be like a 6 out of 10. It's like the comic Oscar, which means it's fucking worthless. Okay.
Oscars do what?
Shut the fuck up, God. We're talking about aliens.
Parasite won Best Picture? How can Best Foreign Picture also be Best Picture? Doesn't make any
Speaking of
sense!
Parasite, the manga Parasite has a very similar plot to Animorphs, and somebody's probably typed that as a comment by now.
Look,
But Animorphs seems cooler.
good. I'm
By
glad.
a lot.
All right. So before we dive in, I just want to kind of give a quick overview of the central characters of the story, so I don't have to explain them in line as we go through the books. The 5 main protagonists of Animorphs are Jake, Rachel, Cassie, Marco, and Tobias. So Jake is like Tobias.
Tobuscus?
I did not have sexual relations with that
Chicken
woman.
and a biscuit, mashed potatoes.
Continue.
Demerits for everybody. I don't know why, but I just feel like giving one to everybody. All right. So Jake is the kind of reluctant leader of the group. He's characterized in the beginning of the series to kind of be like the most mature, I suppose, for his age. Everyone kind of describes him as a natural leader because,
Red Ring.
It needs to
Yeah,
be about
it's like
20% gore.
Exactly, right?
but yeah, he's just like a normal kid. He plays basketball and shit, whatever. But he also plays video games and stuff. He's just a
It needs
normal
to be about
dude. Talks about
20% gore.
Sega and Doom and stuff, but he also plays basketball.
Sick. Fuck yeah,
Fucking
man.
dude.
Gamers rise up against
So,
the Yerk infestation.
It's fucking well, yeah. I mean, that's what we do. So he's kind of I don't know, just kind of like a normal kid thrown into extraordinary situations.
He's Leonardo.
He's very Leonardo-esque, and he's also Rachel's cousin, and yeah,
They do it.
oh, they do it.
I don't think
They don't do it.
I'm pretty sure.
Even though Rachel's catchphrase is "Let's do it," she said.
Classic.
Every time they're about to go on some crazy suicide mission, she's like, okay, so Rachel is his cousin, but she's also like kind of like the most psychotic. Like everybody else gets kind of like really fucking depressed and like miserable. She just kind of like becomes more and more addicted to combat, and like that's how she
She's
deals
the
with things.
munchie.
She's sort of like
She's the munchie.
She's sort of like a yandere, or like,
To a degree.
but not with like murder, but just with like war.
It
Yeah.
needs to be
Destroying
about
things.
Yeah, she's kind of got violent tendencies, and you know, that's just her way of dealing with these things.
She's like a
she's also
pretty blonde girl.
yeah, she's described as like, you know, like unusually like pretty for her age. Although she's very tall. She's like kind of like an Amazonian kind of character, you know, like a Wonder Woman-esque kind of thing. Like attractive, but will like fucking beat the shit out of you and like gives like you zero fucks. Will destroy you.
I can defeat any woman.
Listen closely.
Yeah.
This is important.
I'm not gonna deny it. It's probably true. She's 13, dude. I hope you can kick her ass. Jesus Christ.
It needs to be about 20% cooler.
Steamroll you.
It needs to be about 20% cooler.
No,
They have to acquire the morph. So like the more dangerous the animal is, the harder it is to get close to it and touch it
But
and
they all
acquire.
can acquire.
They all
any animal.
potentially
Theoretically,
can
they
turn
could.
into any animal.
Yeah.
So, on the opposite side of the spectrum, there's Cassie. Cassie is kind of like the bleeding heart of the group. She's like the ethical soul. Yeah, her and her family run like a wildlife reserve and like veterinary clinic,
Convenient.
which is very convenient for them because it allows them to get some initial morphs before they kind of you know, go and do more crazy things like break into zoos and fucking go transported to other planets and acquire crazy alien morphs and shit.
Oh, nice.
It's fucking rad. Yeah, so she's pretty cool like that. The wildlife clinic eventually kind of becomes their pseudo home base. They do a lot of planning and preparation in that
Welcome
area.
to the
It's
galactic
isolated from
community,
like the rest of
where
society, so
diplomats
nobody
from
will
around
fucking
the galaxy meet to
bog
decide
on and shit like
galactic
that.
law.
She's also the
and
most
voting
talented for
resolutions.
morphing. Like usually when you morph, it's like
Proposed
horrendous and
resolutions from the
ugly and
queue,
disgusting.
which will
It
add
doesn't
more
hurt.
diplomatic weight to its total support. The resolution with the most support in the queue will move onto the Senate floor once it is in session. There it will be voted on whether it should become galactic law. The Senate floor is where the galactic community votes to pass or defeat the proposed resolution from the queue which had the most diplomatic support. As a member, you can vote yes, no, or abstain. If the resolution passes, it will become galactic law and impact everyone in the galactic community. If it is defeated, it cannot be proposed again for some time. The resolutions screen is the list of the currently enacted resolutions. You may propose a new resolution by selecting it from a resolution chain, which will cost you influence.
But you can feel your bones cracking and breaking and rearranging and your organs popping and like getting sucked out into space and shit. But she can like purposely control how the morphing is done. So like there's one point in the books where she actually like demorphs from a bird but keeps the wings so she can like keep herself from crashing into the ground. She has like better control. And it's like something that like even andalites can do, but it's very rare.
I remember a lot of the times with bird morphs in particular, the way that it starts is like the like hard bird feet. Your bones like explode out of your leg skin
Right.
and like harden into talons, and your like skin is just like hanging.
They describe
off.
this also in painful detail about how these like horrible abomination things are going on.
So is morphing painful?
It is not painful,
Okay.
but
It's
it's
weird.
very
Uncomfortable.
fucking uncomfortable.
Okay.
Just like emotionally and psychologically, of like feeling like, oh, my heart stopped, but I'm not dead. Or like I just sprouted a second heart because this alien I'm morphing
Oh,
has
my,
two
my
hearts.
bones just ripped out
Right.
all of my skin.
Yeah, you know, like I'm morphing into like an
Juicy.
octopus and all my bones are gone and I'm just writhing around as like a human puppet. So
If you could morph to acquire a morph, animal thing, you have to touch it. Is
Yes.
that all?
pretty much, you touch it and focus for a
So
second.
Could you,
Takes
could
like a
you,
minute.
could you morph into a yurt?
Yes, they do that at one point. Spoilers. I don't think I talked about it in here actually. That was kind of a filler book, but yes, they do.
If you're a Yerk, then do you have the ability to do what the Yerks do?
Yes, you do.
Presumably.
Yeah. There's a lot of like lines they don't cross for ethical reasons. Like they decide early on that they will not use their morphin power for pleasure, so like doing fun things. Like it's only for fighting against the Yerks
That's just so that they
in personal games.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, define fun.
completely sidestep the issue of will they fuck up
Demerit.
animals.
Another thing they decide is they will not acquire any like being with intelligence without permission, because you can morph into another human. Like I could touch Digi and become Digibro.
But we not behind.
But why would you ever
Why would you
something
want
like
to?
that?
You know, but yeah,
Wait, so you can become a specific person?
correct. Because when you morph,
you become the
specific
you
animal.
touched.
Okay.
Not just
So if me and you both acquired the same like cat, we'd be
But like in the process of morphing into me, would they then like have to struggle with like my
No.
mind versus?
It's just like human. I mean, because if once you're used to the form and you know what's coming, it's not as difficult to deal with. So if you're a human morphing up, you know what to expect as a human. I would not gain your memories. I would just gain your physical appearance.
Oh, I do have one other question. Let's just say that I find like a really old man and I absorb his DNA, whatever, and like I morph into him. Like, do I morph him into as an old man
Yes.
or like a? Okay, so it's whatever.
Because
I
like
absorbed it when he was a child, but now he's an old man, but I still have morph.
you would
But I
still
need the
become a
child.
child.
Okay, all right, I got it.
So it's like the DNA in the condition is when you acquire it.
What if you you get the morphin power when you're a little kid, and you acquire another little kid, and then you get older, and like he's older, then can you like morph into him at like 2 different stages of his life?
Presumably.
You would morph into him at the age he was when you acquired
When you first
But
acquired
could
it.
not
He said
acquire
what he
it.
did it
So
again.
you
You're making
can
this
turn into
whole
like
the issue.
3-year-old him.
Yeah, can you reacquire the same person? Is what it's
There's a
It's
variety
never
of
done in the
possible.
series, but I would assume you probably could.